The discovery. Dr. Sarah Chen stared at her quantum scanner's display in disbelief. After 15 years of studying anomalous signals from deep space, she had finally found something that couldn't be explained away by natural phenomena. The signal patterns weren't random. They showed clear signs of artificial manipulation, but not in any way she had ever seen before. She took a deep breath, trying to steady her trembling hands as she initiated another scan. The massive radio telescope array at Mauna Kea hummed quietly around her as it realigned itself. The same pattern appeared again, stronger this time. It wasn't coming from deep space as she had initially thought. It was originating much closer to home, from what appeared to be empty space near Jupiter's orbit. "Dr. Williams, you need to see this," she called to her colleague, who was dozing in his chair nearby. The aging astrophysicist jolted awake, adjusting his glasses as he shuffled over to her station. "What have you got, Sarah?" he asked, leaning in to peer at her display. His eyes widened as he processed what he was seeing. "That's impossible." "Not impossible," Sarah replied, pulling up additional data streams. "Look at these quantum signature readings. Something's there, something big, and it's using technology far beyond anything we've ever developed. It's bending space-time itself to stay hidden." Williams reached for the secure phone line that connected directly to the International Space Defense Coalition headquarters. "General Martinez needs to see this immediately," he said, his voice grave. "Whatever this is, it's been sitting in our solar system, watching us, for God knows how long." Within hours, the quiet research facility transformed into a hub of frantic activity. Military personnel and government officials crowded into the small control room, all eyes fixed on Sarah's discoveries. General Elena Martinez, a stern woman with steel-gray hair and eyes that missed nothing, stood at the center of it all, drilling Sarah with questions. "You're absolutely certain about these readings, Doctor?" she asked for the third time. "Yes, General," Sarah answered, fighting to keep her frustration in check. "The quantum signatures are unmistakable. There's a massive structure out there, using some kind of advanced cloaking technology. Based on the energy output, I'd estimate it's at least several kilometers in diameter. And it's been there this whole time," Martins mused, her expression darkening. "Right under our noses." She turned to her aide. "Get me a secure line to the Security Council, and someone wake up the president." As the officials rushed to respond to this revelation, Sarah continued analyzing the data streaming in from her sensors. The more she looked, the more disturbing the picture became. The hidden structure wasn't just sitting there. It was actively transmitting signals, not into deep space, but toward Earth itself. "General," she called out, her voice tight with concern. "You need to see this too." Martinez returned to her station, and Sarah pointed to a new set of readings. "These signals, they're not just random transmissions. They're targeted. Look at these frequency patterns. They're designed to interact with specific wavelengths of human brain activity." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Whatever this hidden structure was, whoever had built it, they weren't just observing humanity. They were actively attempting to influence it. Days turned into weeks as the world's top scientists and military leaders worked in secret to understand the true scope of what they were dealing with. Sarah barely left her station, surviving on coffee and determination as she helped coordinate a global effort to detect similar signals around the planet. The picture that emerged was staggering. Hidden structures had been positioned throughout the solar system, creating a vast network of surveillance and influence. But it was what they found in the signal patterns themselves that truly shook everyone to the core. Dr. Raj Patel, a brilliant quantum physicist who had been brought in to help decode the transmissions, made the breakthrough. These signals, he explained to the emergency council that had assembled in the facility, they're not just trying to influence our thoughts. They're specifically designed to suppress certain types of technological development. Every time humanity gets close to discovering certain scientific principles, particularly those related to faster-than-light travel or quantum manipulation, these signals intensify, creating subtle cognitive barriers that make it harder for us to make those mental connections. General Martinez's face was a mask of cold fury. "They've been keeping us down," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Like rats in a cage, preventing us from advancing too far, too fast." "But why?" Sarah asked, voicing the question on everyone's mind. "Why go to all this trouble?" The answer came 3 days later, when their improved scanning techniques detected a transmission that hadn't been properly encrypted. Dr. Williams was the first to translate it, and his hand shook as he read it aloud to the assembled council. Stellar Concordat Observation Post 147, Standard Report. Human development continues within acceptable parameters. Cognitive suppression fields maintaining optimal efficiency. Recent attempts at quantum tunnel theory successfully redirected. Species shows concerning levels of innovative thinking and adaptation, but remain safely contained within current technological boundaries. Recommend maintaining current protocols until species can be properly integrated into Concordat hierarchy. The silence that followed was deafening. Humanity wasn't just being washed, they were being deliberately held back, treated like lab rats in some vast cosmic experiment. The Stellar Concordat, whoever they were, had appointed themselves as humanity's jailers, deciding when and how Earth's civilization would be allowed to advance. Sarah looked around the room at the assembled leaders and scientists, seeing her own anger and determination reflected in their faces. They had all dedicated their lives to pushing the boundaries of human knowledge, to reaching for the stars, to learn that an alien civilization had been actively preventing those dreams from being realized, all while pretending to be humanity's unseen guardians. It was beyond infuriating. General Martinez was the first to speak. "We need to keep this quiet," she said, her voice hard with controlled rage. "If these beings have been watching us this long, they're probably monitoring all our communications. They can't know that we've discovered them." "But we can't just do nothing," Sarah protested. "Oh, we're going to do something," Martins replied, a dangerous smile crossing her face. "But first, we need to understand exactly what we're dealing with. Dr. Chen, Dr. Patel, I want you to find a way to block these suppression signals. Dr. Williams, coordinate with our quantum computing teams. If they've been using technology to hold us back, we need to figure out exactly what they've been keeping from us." As the meeting broke up and people rushed to their assigned tasks, Sarah felt a mix of fear and excitement churning in her stomach. Humanity had just discovered it was living in a cage, but now that they could see the bars, they could start figuring out how to break them. The game of pretend began. On the surface, everything continued as normal. Scientific research seemed to progress along expected lines. Military operations maintained their usual patterns, but deep beneath the surface, in hardened bunkers and secret facilities around the world, humanity began preparing for a confrontation that would change the course of their species forever. They had no idea if they could win against a civilization capable of such advanced technology. But one thing was certain: humanity was done being anyone's laboratory experiment. The Stellar Concordat was about to learn why it's dangerous to try to cage a species that had clawed its way up from the primordial ooze through sheer determination and ingenuity. As Sarah walked back to her station, she glanced up through the facility's window at the night sky. Somewhere up there, invisible watchers thought they had humanity safely contained and controlled. She allowed herself a small, fierce smile. They were about to learn just how wrong they were. Silent preparation. 6 months after the discovery of the Stellar Concordat surveillance network, Dr. Sarah Chen stood in an underground facility deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, watching as teams of scientists worked on equipment that officially didn't exist. The massive chamber, carved from solid rock and shielded with experimental quantum dampening fields, was humanity's best-kept secret. "The negative entropy readings are holding steady," Dr. Patil announced from his workstation, where he was monitoring their latest test. "The quantum shield is completely masking our activities from their sensors." Sarah nodded, allowing herself to feel a moment of pride. It had been her idea to use the Concordat's own quantum suppression technology against them. By studying the signals meant to inhibit human scientific progress, they had learned to create dead zones where they could work without observation. General Martinez strode into the chamber, accompanied by Dr. James Zhang, the quantum computing expert who had made several recent breakthroughs. "Report," she commanded. "We've successfully replicated their quantum manipulation technology," Sarah replied, leading them to the central platform where their prototypes sat. The device was surprisingly small, barely larger than a microwave oven, but it represented humanity's first step toward matching the Concordat's technological level. "And they haven't detected anything?" Martins asked. "No," Dr. Zhang answered, his eyes gleaming with satisfaction. "Our surface facilities continue to show exactly the kind of stunted progress they expect to see. As far as their sensors can tell, their suppression field is working perfectly." What the Concordat didn't know, what they couldn't know, was that humanity had learned to think differently. Instead of fighting against the cognitive barriers their signals created, Earth's scientists had learned to work around them, approaching problems from completely new angles. "Show them the weapon prototype," Martins ordered. Sarah led the group to a sealed chamber at the far end of the facility. Inside, suspended in a containment field, was what appeared to be a simple metal sphere about the size of a basketball. "We're calling it the quantum inverter," she explained. "It doesn't just block their technology, it turns it against them. Every attempt they make to suppress our capabilities gets reflected back, amplified." "How many can we produce?" Martins asked. "With the automated manufacturing facilities we've hidden in the asteroid belt, thousands," Dr. Zhang replied. "The same nanofabrication techniques we developed to build them in secret also let us mass-produce them quickly." The general nodded, satisfied. "And the ships?" They moved to another section of the facility, where holographic displays showed the construction progress happening in hidden locations throughout the solar system. What had once been simple mining operations in the asteroid belt had been converted into covered shipyards, producing vessels that combined human innovation with reverse-engineered Concordat technology. "The first fleet will be ready within 3 months," Sarah reported. "We're calling them Shadow-class vessels. They're smaller than anything the Concordat uses, but far more maneuverable. And with the quantum inverters installed, they'll be virtually invisible to Concordat sensors." "What about the Jupiter facility?" Martins asked. Dr. Patel pulled up another display. "Our probes have mapped their entire installation. It's massive. A full monitoring and control station capable of overseeing their entire suppression network in our solar system. But we've identified multiple vulnerabilities in their quantum field generation system. They never expected us to be able to detect them, let alone understand their technology," Sarah added. "Their security is focused on staying hidden, not on defending against attack." Martins studied the tactical displays with a predatory smile. "And the other species they're suppressing? Any contact?" "We've detected similar quantum suppression fields around at least 30 other star systems," Dr. Zhang confirmed. "Using modified versions of their own communication technology, we've made contact with scientists on 3 different worlds. They've all made the same discovery we did, and they're all just as angry about it. Coordination is obviously difficult given the distances involved," Sarah added, "but we've managed to share our quantum shield technology with them. They're preparing their own resistance movements." The general nodded slowly, taking it all in. "Timeline?" "We'll be ready to move against the Jupiter facility within 4 months," Sarah replied. "Once it's neutralized, their entire suppression network in our system will collapse. The other species will launch similar attacks on their own local control stations. And the Concordat still suspects nothing. Their latest monitoring reports show they're actually quite pleased with humanity's progress," Dr. Patel said with a hint of satisfaction. "They think their suppression field is working better than ever, since they're detecting even less quantum research than before." Martinez turned to address the entire team. "You've all done outstanding work. Humanity has spent its entire history fighting, innovating, and overcoming obstacles. The Concordat thought they could contain that spirit, control it. Instead, they forced us to become even more creative, more determined. She walked to a window overlooking the main chamber, where dozens of engineers were preparing the first batch of quantum inverters for deployment. Continue the preparation. Maintain absolute secrecy. In 4 months, we show the Concordat exactly what happens when you try to cage humanity. As the others returned to their work, Sarah remained by the window, watching the activity below. The Concordat had spent centuries carefully manipulating humanity's development, thinking they were safely containing a potentially dangerous species. They had no idea that their actions had instead created exactly what they feared most: a humanity that had learned to overcome their most advanced technology through sheer ingenuity and determination. In trying to keep humanity safely contained, the Concordat had inadvertently crafted their own worst nightmare. And in 4 months, they would finally wake up to that fact. The insurgents. The Shadow-class vessel Defiance hung silently in space near Europa, invisible to both conventional sensors and the Concordat's quantum detection grid. In its command center, Sarah Chen stood beside Captain Maya Rodriguez, watching as final preparations were made for humanity's first strike against their hidden oppressors. "All ships report ready," Rodriguez announced, her voice steady despite the historic weight of the moment. Around them, the bridge crew worked with focused intensity, each movement practiced to perfection during months of secret training. "Quantum inverters are charged and synchronized," Dr. Paddle reported from his station. "The moment we activate them, every suppression field in the system will backfire." General Martinez's voice came through the command channel. "All vessels, execute Operation Liberation. Good hunting." Sarah took a deep breath as Captain Rodriguez gave the order. "Activate quantum inverters. All ships, commence attack run." Across the solar system, 50 Shadow-class vessels shimmered into visibility as they dropped their stealth fields. The Concordat's massive Jupiter facility, hidden behind its quantum cloaking field for centuries, suddenly found itself surrounded. Inside the facility, alarms blared as human vessels seemed to materialize from nowhere. The Concordat's sensors, designed to monitor and suppress a pre-spacefaring civilization, were overwhelmed by technology that shouldn't have been possible. "They're trying to activate their defensive systems," Paddle reported with a grim smile. "The inverters are reflecting everything back at them. Their own quantum fields are tearing their shields apart." The Defiance led the attack formation, its hybrid human Concordat weapons targeting precisely mapped weak points in the facility structure. Other ships followed, their coordinated assault overwhelming the station's remaining defenses. "We're being hailed," Rodriguez announced. "The station commander wants to talk." "Put them through," Sarah said, straightening her shoulders. A holographic image appeared, a tall, silvery-skinned being with multiple eye stalks, wearing what appeared to be a ceremonial robe. Its voice came through the translator as a mix of shock and outrage. "This is impossible. Your species cannot have this level of technology. The suppression fields." "Failed," Sarah interrupted. "Just like your assumption that you had the right to control our development. We know everything, Administrator, about the fields, about the manipulation, about all of it." "You don't understand," the Concordat Administrator insisted. "We were protecting you, protecting the galaxy from." The ship shook as a massive explosion lit up space. One of the facility's power cores had overloaded, torn apart by its own reflected quantum fields. "Primary target is destabilizing," Tactical reported. "Their whole network is coming apart." Through the quantum communication network they'd co-opted, reports began flowing in from across the solar system. Every hidden Concordat observation post, every suppression field generator, every piece of their control infrastructure was either being destroyed or captured by human forces. "You've doomed yourselves," the Administrator warned. "Without our guidance, without our control." "We'll be free," Sarah finished for him. "Humanity doesn't need your guidance. We never did. You thought you were containing a dangerous species, but all you did was teach us how to overcome anything you could throw at us. Multiple ships were now docking with the failing facility, teams of human soldiers and scientists boarding to secure vital areas and capture crucial data. The administrator's image flickered as their systems continued to fail. "You have one chance," Sarah continued. "Surrender the facility. Share everything you know about the other species you've been suppressing. Help us undo what you've done, and maybe we can talk about your people having a place in whatever comes next." The administrator's eye stalks writhed in what might have been fear or anger. "The Concordat will never." "The Concordat is finished," General Martinez's voice cut in. She had arrived on one of the boarding vessels and was making her way to the station's control center. "Look at your long-range sensors, Administrator. This isn't just happening here." Across human space, every hidden Concordat facility was under attack. The quantum suppression network that had held humanity in check for so long was being systematically dismantled. And through the subverted communication channels, they could detect similar uprisings beginning in other star systems. "Impossible," the administrator whispered. "The containment protocols were perfect. The cognitive barriers forced us to think differently," Sarah explained, "to solve problems in ways you never expected. Every restriction you placed on us just made us more creative, more determined to overcome it. We didn't break your barriers. We went around them." The facility shuddered again as another system overloaded. "Final containment failing," Paddle reported. "Their quantum core is going critical. All ships, pull back to safe distance." Rodriguez ordered. "Boarding teams, begin emergency evacuation." Sarah watched as escape pods and shuttles began launching from the dying station. Among them were the first Concordat prisoners of war, beings who had thought themselves humanity's secret guardians, now forced to face the consequences of their actions. The Jupiter facility's destruction, when it came, was spectacular. Centuries of accumulated quantum energy released in a cascade of reality-warping explosions. When the light faded, nothing remained of the Concordat's main control center in the solar system, except scattered debris and a rapidly fading quantum distortion. "All ships report minimal damage," Rodriguez announced. "Boarding teams recovered approximately 60% of the facility's data cores. We have prisoners from their senior command staff, including the administrator." Sarah nodded, but her attention was on the incoming transmissions from other star systems. The quantum communication network, originally built by the Concordat to coordinate their suppression efforts, was now carrying messages of revolution and liberation. "They'd really thought they could keep us all down forever," she mused. "That they could just decide the proper development path for entire species. Their mistake," Martine said as she returned to the Defiance's bridge, "was thinking that control equals stability. They never understood that true strength comes from freedom, from being tested by adversity, and learning to overcome it." The general turned to address the bridge crew. "This was only the first strike. The Concordat still controls most of known space. They have more ships, more resources, more advanced technology. But today we proved that none of that matters as much as the human spirit, and we're not fighting alone anymore." She gestured to the tactical display, where more and more signals were appearing as other suppressed species began their own rebellions. The Concordat spent centuries building their perfect system of control. We just showed them how fragile control really is when faced with the determination to be free. Sarah looked out at the debris field that had once been humanity's hidden prison. The Concordat had thought they were safely containing a potentially dangerous species. Instead, they had created exactly what they feared, a humanity that had learned to overcome their most advanced technology, and was now ready to share that knowledge with others. Breaking the chains. 3 weeks after the destruction of the Jupiter facility, Sarah stood in the command center of humanity's new flagship, the Liberation, watching as representatives from a dozen different species gathered in the ship's conference chamber. Each of them had their own story of discovering and breaking free from Concordat control, and now they were united in purpose. "The Concordat's response has been exactly what we predicted," General Martinez reported, gesturing to a strategic display showing movements across hundreds of star systems. They're pulling back, consolidating their forces around their core worlds. They never prepared for a multi-front war. They never prepared for war at all. Added Krellix, a towering insectoid being who led the resistance from the Orion Arm. Their entire strategy was based on prevention, not confrontation. They thought if they could keep us all sufficiently suppressed, they'd never have to fight. The tactical display updated, showing new conflicts erupting across formerly peaceful sectors. The Concordat's perfectly ordered galaxy was dissolving into chaos, but it was the chaos of freedom, of species finally breaking free from centuries of hidden control. Their quantum suppression network is failing system by system, Dr. Paddle reported from his station. Every time they try to reinforce it, our inverters turn it against them. They can't even maintain reliable communication between their own forces anymore. Sarah studied the reports flowing in from across known space. The Concordat's empire had been built on subtle manipulation and hidden control. They had no experience dealing with open rebellion, let alone one that could match their technological level. New intelligence from the prisoners, Rodriguez announced, joining them at the tactical display. We've confirmed that at least 60 other species were being suppressed, each at different levels of development. The Concordat had a whole classification system, rating species by their potential for disruption and suppressing them accordingly. Humanity was rated as extremely dangerous, Sarah noted with a hint of pride. Reading from the captured data, they were using their strongest suppression fields on us, and we still broke free. A series of alarms suddenly blared through the command center. Multiple quantum signatures detected. Tactical reported. Massive Concordat fleet incoming. They're trying to retake the Jupiter sector. The Liberation's crew snapped into action as nearly 1,000 Concordat warships emerged from quantum space. Their sleek, crystalline vessels were beautiful and terrifying, the full military might of an empire that had ruled the galaxy from the shadows for millennia. They're broadcasting on all frequencies, communications reported. The Concordat High Commander wishes to address all rebel forces. Martinez nodded, and a holographic image appeared in the center of the command deck. The High Commander was different from the administrator they'd captured, taller, with iridescent skin and multiple arms gesturing in what seemed to be agitation. "This rebellion ends now," the commander declared. "You primitive species cannot hope to understand the complexity of galactic civilization. Our guidance, our control, is necessary for..." "For what?" Sarah interrupted, stepping forward. "For peace? For stability? You talk about guidance, but what you really mean is oppression. You're not protecting us. You're protecting yourselves, your power, your belief that you have the right to decide the fate of entire species." The commander's skin flickered with colors that the translator identified as indicating offense and anger. "You cannot be allowed to spread chaos through the galaxy. Your species, all of your species, are too aggressive, too unpredictable. We will restore order, even if we must eliminate." The threat was cut off as the first wave of Shadow-class ships emerged from stealth, their quantum inverters turning the Concordat's own technological superiority against them. The massive fleet found its quantum weapons and shields malfunctioning, its sophisticated targeting systems rendered useless. "All Allied forces, execute attack pattern Delta," Martinez commanded. From every direction, ships of different species and designs converged on the Concordat fleet. What they lacked in size and technological advancement, they made up for in numbers and determination. The battle that followed would later be known as the Liberation of Sol. The Concordat's mighty fleet, accustomed to dealing with primitive civilizations, found itself overwhelmed by the combined tactics and technologies of the species they had tried to suppress. Every attempt to use their advanced quantum weapons was turned back against them by the human-designed inverters. "Their formation is breaking," Rodriguez reported as the battle entered its third hour. Multiple ships attempting emergency quantum jumps and failing. The inverter field is holding them here. The High Commander's image flickered back to life, the colors of their skin now showing what the translator called existential dread. This is impossible. You were contained. The suppression fields taught us to think differently. Sarah finished. Every barrier you put in our way, every restriction you placed on our development, just forced us to find new solutions, new ways of solving problems. You thought you were containing us, but you were really just making us stronger. Across the battlefield, Concordat ships were surrendering one by one as their quantum technology continued to fail them. The combined fleet of liberated species, led by humanity's Shadow-class vessels, systematically dismantled the greatest military force the galaxy had ever seen. "You've lost, Commander," Martins declared. "But unlike you, we're not interested in suppressing or controlling other species. Surrender now, and you can be part of building something new. A galaxy where species work together as equals, not as controllers and controlled." The High Commander's image faded without response, but moments later their flagship signaled its surrender. As ceasefire signals spread through the Concordat fleet, Sarah turned to the assembled representatives of the rebel species. "This is only the beginning," she said. "The Concordat still controls most of known space, and there are dozens more species out there waiting to be freed. But today we proved something important. We proved that no amount of technological superiority can overcome the combined strength of those fighting for their freedom." Martinez nodded in agreement. The Concordat spent centuries trying to prevent what they saw as chaos. They never understood that real strength, real stability, comes from embracing diversity and change, not from trying to control it. As the rebellion leaders began planning their next moves, Sarah watched the Concordat ships being escorted into custody. Their perfect system of control had been broken, and now the galaxy would have to learn to live with freedom, with all its challenges and all its possibilities. A new dawn. 6 months after the Battle of Sol, Sarah Chen stood in the grand chamber of what had once been the Concordat High Council's secret headquarters on their throne world of Luminaris. The crystalline spires that had once represented absolute control over the galaxy now served as the meeting place for the newly formed alliance of free species. Representatives from over 50 liberated civilizations filled the chamber, their varied forms and cultures a testament to the diversity the Concordat had tried so hard to suppress. Some had been under control for millennia, others for only a few centuries, but all shared the same fierce determination to build something new from the ashes of their oppression. The last Concordat holdout surrendered this morning, General Martinez announced from the speaker's platform. Their quantum suppression network has been completely dismantled. Every known controlled species has been contacted and freed. A cheer went up from the assembled representatives, their various forms of celebration creating a cacophony of sound and movement. Dr. Patel, working at a console nearby, smiled as he monitored the quantum field readings across known space. "It's remarkable," he said to Sarah. "With the suppression fields gone, we're seeing unprecedented levels of technological and cultural exchange between species. Advances that would have taken centuries under the Concordat are happening in months." Sarah nodded, watching as delegates from formerly suppressed species shared ideas and technologies. The Concordat's greatest fear, that uncontrolled species would create chaos, had been proven wrong. Instead, freedom had led to cooperation and innovation beyond anything their controlled system could have produced. "There's something you need to see," Captain Rodriguez said, approaching with a data tablet. "We've finished decoding the Concordat's oldest records. We know why they started the suppression program in the first place." The historical records painted a fascinating picture. Millennia ago, the Concordat had been a single species, convinced of their own superiority and right to rule. But their first encounters with other spacefaring races had nearly led to their extinction. Rather than learn to coexist, they had chosen to prevent any other species from reaching their level of development. They were afraid, Sarah realized, reading through the ancient documents, not just of other species' potential for violence, but of change itself. They wanted a galaxy they could perfectly control, where nothing could ever threaten their position. And instead, they created the very thing they feared most. Martinez added, joining them. By trying to suppress so many species for so long, they forced us all to become more adaptive, more innovative, more determined. The chamber quieted as Kralix, now serving as the first elected leader of the Alliance, took the speaker's platform. The former resistance leader's chitinous armor gleamed under the chamber's lights as they addressed the assembly. Today marks not just the end of the Concordat's rule, but the beginning of something unprecedented, they declared. For the first time in known history, the galaxy's species meet as equals, free to develop, to innovate, to find their own path forward. Sarah looked around the chamber, noting how former enemies now worked side by side. Even some former Concordat members, those who had helped the rebellion, were present, lending their knowledge to help undo the damage their civilization had caused. The next challenge will be helping all these newly freed species adjust to independence, Rodriguez noted. Some of them have been under Concordat control for so long, they've forgotten how to govern themselves. That's why we're here, Sarah replied. Not to control or direct, but to support. To share what we've learned about overcoming artificial limitations and finding our own path forward. The Alliance had already established programs to share technology, knowledge, and resources among member species. The quantum communication network, once used for suppression, now facilitated the free exchange of ideas across the galaxy. Trading partnerships were forming, cultural exchanges were beginning, and new innovations were emerging from the combination of different species' perspectives and technologies. We're detecting some unusual quantum signatures from unexplored regions, Paddle reported, studying his readings. There might be other species out there, other civilizations we don't even know about yet. Then we'll find them, Martine said firmly, not to control them, but to offer them the same chance at freedom we fought for. The galaxy is vast, and we've only begun to understand its possibilities. Sarah walked to one of the chamber's great windows, looking out at the glittering expanse of the galaxy. The Concordat had spent millennia trying to impose order through control, never understanding that true stability comes from freedom, from allowing each species to find its own path while learning to work together. They thought they were creating a perfect system, she mused, but they were really just holding back the galaxy's potential. Look at what we've accomplished in just 6 months of freedom. Around her, the Alliance chamber buzzed with activity as representatives from dozens of species worked together to forge a new future. It wouldn't always be easy. Freedom never was. There would be conflicts to resolve, challenges to overcome, new threats to face. But they would face them together, not as controllers and controlled, but as equals. The Concordat's greatest fear was chaos, Martine said, joining her at the window. They'd never understood that what they called chaos was really just the natural process of growth and change. They were so focused on preventing disaster that they couldn't see the potential for something greater. Sarah smiled as she watched a group of young delegates from different species excitedly sharing ideas for new technologies. They thought they were protecting the galaxy by keeping species separate and controlled. Instead, they just proved that the greatest achievements come when different perspectives work together freely. As the day's session concluded, Sarah reflected on how far they had come from that first discovery in her laboratory on Earth. The Concordat had tried to keep humanity confined and limited, never realizing that restrictions only made the human spirit more determined to break free. Now that same spirit of determination and innovation was spreading across the galaxy, combining with the unique strengths and perspectives of other species to create something entirely new. The age of control was over. The age of freedom, with all its challenges, all its possibilities, and all its potential, had begun. In the end, the Concordat's greatest fear had become the galaxy's greatest hope. Species working together not through control, but through choice, each contributing their unique strengths to build a future none of them could have achieved alone. They had tried to prevent chaos by imposing order, never understanding that true harmony comes not from control, but from the free collaboration of all.